damn phones. Babylons can't crack the code.
Week 2 of the college football playoff rankings have come and gone, and nothing really changed that much, or really any big drastic changes that really affect the rankings themselves and what's going to happen in the end. Nothing really changed from my takeaways from the first playoff rankings to now. Of course, it's really only been 1 week, and if you want to watch that video, link in description down below. Now, what I said in that video is that the Pac-12 seems like they will not have a shot at the college football playoff, and it's even more evident after Oregon lost, and now the highest ranked team in the Pac-12 is currently ranked 20th, who is USC. Now, USC is currently 3-0, but it really seems almost impossible for them to move that much up the rankings to be a number 4 seed possibly in the college football playoff this year when they're just that low ranked. And yes, they are undefeated, but the Pac-12 is having a lot of problems right now where games are getting canceled pretty much left and right, and USC has been a team affected by that. I mean, they've only played 3 games. Other takeaways that I had were that the Big 12 isn't completely out of the playoff picture yet, and this is pretty clear. I'm not saying that a Big 12 team will reach the playoffs. That's not the case. I actually think a Big 12 team is not going to reach the playoffs this year. But I'm saying they're not completely out of it. I mean, Iowa State's at 9, OU's at 11, and even OSU is at 15, which I'm going to talk more about later in the video for my reaction when this dropped. Another thing that I said is that Cincinnati is in a pretty good spot to make the college football playoff. Again, not saying they're going to make it, but they do have a pretty good shot to if they can just win out, and it's pretty clear. Even though their game got canceled this past weekend, they are still ranked 7th and 8-0 right now currently. Another thing I also said was that Northwestern honestly is not a top 10 team, and this past weekend they actually lost to Michigan State, and it showed that their defense cannot always win them the games when their offense is not that great. And it was on full display this past weekend when they played Michigan State and lost, and now they're out of the top 10 and ranked 14th in the nation. My final takeaway in my last video on the college football playoff rankings was that BYU is in bad position to reach the college football playoff. Everything is against them, and if they want to reach the college football playoff, they have to schedule a real team. Which BYU, as of I'm recording this video, has broke the news that they will actually be playing the number 18 team in the nation in Coastal Carolina, who is also 9-0. I'm not going to lie, I have BYU winning this game, but I'm going to be honest. I don't know how this win is going to look in the playoff rankings if they do, in fact, beat them. Now, yes, they are beating a ranked opponent who is undefeated and has shown that they have played some pretty good football this year. But the thing with Coastal Carolina is that they are a Sun Belt team. It's clear that they're not really getting the respect they want either in the playoff rankings, or really any rankings at all that's not the AP poll. And even still in the AP poll, some people think they're still too low because they're undefeated. And you can't really argue with a team that's undefeated. And honestly, Coastal Carolina has had a tougher schedule than BYU. But I just don't know how it's going to look in the playoff rankings and how the committee's going to view it, just because Coastal Carolina isn't a team like Washington or a team like Cincinnati, if you kind of get what I'm saying. Now that I have briefly described my takeaways from my last video and how they really haven't changed much at all, I'm going to talk about my reaction when I saw the rankings drop when I first saw them. The first thing that I noticed when I watched the college football rankings drop was that Oklahoma State jumped 8 spots from last week to now. Last week, in the first playoff rankings, Oklahoma State was ranked as the 23rd team in the nation after a very bad Bedlam loss. This past weekend, the Oklahoma State Cowboys would take on 3-5 Texas Tech, and Texas Tech has not been playing very good football all season. And OSU did have a couple offensive pieces out for this game as well, like Chuba Hubbard and a couple more people, but that really shouldn't have affected the outcome that bad due to Chuba Hubbard mainly kind of being off this year, dealing with nagging injuries and stuff like that. And this game should be a game where OSU's defense should be able to have no problem with Texas Tech due to Texas Tech having a bunch of bad play calling this year. This game was actually a pretty good and competitive game. OSU ended up winning 50-44, but this is a Tech team that's really not that great and has not been playing the best football as of late. Both teams kind of played sloppy football with the turnover game. Both teams shared 3 turnovers any game in the past. And honestly, the offense no matter how you look at it, but OSU did not. They really haven't put up numbers like this at all. They did better on offense. The turnovers are pretty bad if you look at it. Yes, they put up 50 points, but 3 turnovers, that's going to cost you against better teams. The fact that Oklahoma State moved up 8 whole spots in the playoff rankings from beating a team who has not really been playing good football all season and is now 3-6 and only beaten them by 6 points really does not make any sense at all. Not that many teams lost in front of them. It was only Oregon and Northwestern is still in fact in front of them. And even North Carolina, who was ahead of OSU, actually lost this past weekend and moved up, which I'm going to talk about next. But it just doesn't really make much sense how they go from 23 all the way to 15 after just barely scraping by a team who is 3-6. That's just my opinion, however. The next thing that I took away from this week's playoff rankings, which is going to be the final thing that I talk about in this video today, is how did North Carolina jump from 19 to 17 after losing by 14 points? You would think if you lost the game, you would move down, not up. North Carolina this past weekend took on the number 2 team in the nation in the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and they were tied all the way up to halftime when the score was 17-7. But North Carolina got shut down in the second half and ended up losing 31-17. And everyone else who loses usually moves down. But if you're North Carolina, you move up somehow. It just doesn't make any sense to me. With that logic, you could say, well, Texas should have moved up, or Texas should have still be ranked in this week's playoff rankings because they lost to a ranked Iowa State team that is now a top 10 team in the nation. It just doesn't make any sense at all for a team that loses by double digits to just move up. And I know it's only 2 spots, but it just doesn't make any sense at all. I know that I said Oklahoma State moving up 8 spots after scraping by a Texas Tech team that has not played that good of football this season was pretty bad, but honestly, this is way worse. North Carolina is 6-3 and the only team in the top 25 with 3 losses currently. And it doesn't really make any sense if you lose a game and move up. And I'm kind of mad about it. And I don't even hate North Carolina at all. I think North Carolina has a very good football team. But if you lose, you're supposed to move down. You're not supposed to move up. That's not how it works. Well, guys, if you guys liked the video, remember to smash that like button, turn on them post notifications, and subscribe for more videos. B. Kelly out.